Or let's pivot over to the Middle East a little bit. Um, I actually want to talk to you a little bit about the American bases in the Middle East. Why are they there? What are they doing in the Middle East? Like we're in Syria and Iraq, and both of these places, both the governments said you're not allowed to be here, get out. So they're there
Right,
illegally by
right,
international law, whatever. But we're
right.
still there, and are they protecting American interests? What is their function right
Okay.
now?
Well, I would say in Syria, it's just a matter of weakening um, the Assad government. That's what it's all about. They've seized actually, the most economically productive part of the country, where the wheat is grown and the oil is pumped, and they've just stolen it, in obvious
When you say they, you mean America has just stolen
the U.S., yes, in an obvious violation of international law. And this is a poor country that was, ripped apart by civil war and is trying to rebuild. And it's hard to, when the world's greatest superpower, takes your most productive region and just seizes it and
it?
keeps it
Well,
away from you.
what are we
That's
doing
that's
with it? Are we just taking it and the
oh
wheat and
yeah
stuff and sending it back home, or what? Selling it and
yeah
cashing out?
yeah.
What?
Well, that's what actually Donald Trump said. We're just going to take the oil. I don't know what the economic. I think it's not so much that we're making any money off of it, but we're just depriving the Assad government, of a source of income. The stated objective, you would say, would be to fight ISIS, and it's clear that again, actually, the Assad government has shown itself very capable of fighting ISIS. In all those parts of the country where a foreign power is not occupying it, it has driven ISIS away with the help of Russia, and it could easily do that in that part of the country too. Now, of course, there's this alliance with the Kurds, but it's there's the Kurds have this dream of independence, right? They're found in different countries in Iraq and Turkey and in Syria, um, and they're a minority in each one of these countries. So they have this hope, which I think the U.S. plays on, of somehow becoming independent someday, but it's not going to happen. And the best thing is to just return to the become a part of Syria again. Again, Kurds were not persecuted. I don't think anybody's even claimed that. And um, and they have been part of Syria. Well, they're within the legally recognized, internationally recognized borders of Syria, and that's where by any sort of any understanding of international law, of international practice, international precedent, those borders should be reestablished. But uh, we're ignoring it. It's just for just because I think again we probably both want to weaken the Assad government and we want to prevent the Russians from having a victory in Syria because the Russians, clearly helped Assad um, to save that part of Syria where we're not stationed and Turkey is not stationed. Turkey has basically the northwest and we've taken the northeast.
So has there been much resistance to push? I mean, do we recognize the Assad government, or are we kind of
Oh,
pulling like?
yeah, no, we're doing whatever we can. We've imposed sanctions on it. We're doing whatever we can to weaken Assad. And I think this
Why do we
again
hate
is
Assad? What's the reason?
it, like everything in the Middle East, it comes down to Israel. Assad is like Iran has been a consistent proponent of Palestinian rights and has always, has always been a consistent opponent of Zionism. And so there has been an obsession within Israel and among, neocons in the United States with destroying or uh, of overturning, the Assad government and installing a friendly regime.
Okay, so that's the only reason. And then Russia though has bases in Syria as well. Russia
Right,
and Syria.
we do. Yeah, they
So
do.
is this a potential hotspot then? I mean, we got
Well,
Russia and the United
potentially,
States
right.
both there. I
I
mean,
Yeah, potentially, of course. Now there have actually been efforts um, to avoid conflict between the U.S. and Russia. I think they actually have set up channels, and they call them what deconfliction channels. There have been some close calls. There have been times when Russian soldiers have been killed and vice versa. I think it's mostly Russian, but it's
Were the Russians killed by us?
yeah. But okay, I'll have to go back. This was several years ago. Actually, I think it was Wagner. There were a number of Russian mercenaries that were killed. I don't know quite how many, but it was a significant number. Um, I don't remember how that actually played out, so forgive me. But there was, I think, partly because of that incident, there was a recognition that, this could flare up, and both sides agreed that they didn't want it to flare up into a U.S.-Russia war. So they do have these established channels of communication, and they've worked out certain routines, like, okay, our planes could go there, and your planes go there. Um, Again, Russia is there at the invitation of an internationally recognized government, right? There's nothing there, so their presence there is entirely legal. The U.S. presence is illegal. It's clearly it's kind of piracy, right? They're there. They've seized the land, and but it's a fact. They've now. I've heard that the U.S. is going to withdraw from bases in Iraq, and if they I think within 2 years. Let's see if it really happens. Um, I think it might because there must be a lot of people within the Pentagon who realize that these bases are really a liability. They're targets for Iran and for various militias in the area. Um, but if the Iraq bases go and the U.S. pulls out of Iraq, I think that makes things more difficult um, for the occupation of northeastern Syria because partly they were supplied through Iraq. See,
Well, 2 years is a long time. I mean, we're looking at potentially a major regional war breaking
right?
out in the next couple of weeks. I mean, it could be tomorrow, and
Yeah,
and then let's say when the Iran eventually retaliates, and we are sending doing whatever we can. Our planes are taking off bases in Syria and Iraq, shooting down these Sidewinder missiles, and then Israel does its retaliation, goes full on and starts shooting missiles every which direction, Lebanon, Syria. Do you think that Russian bases that are in Syria, for example, planes will take up into the sky to try to shoot down those missiles and defend Syria? I mean, and then at what point will Israel or the U.S. say, well, maybe we need to take out these Russian bases? All of a sudden, they're part of the war, and then boom, just like that, we're in
yeah.
World War III. Is that possible?
Well, it's certainly possible. I think there's actually both sides are going to try to avoid it, but it's certainly possible, and
Yeah,
especially when you
both.
have, yeah, especially when you have a country like Israel that just seems to be as entirely reckless. They may try to yeah, again expand the war through in any way they can. Who knows?
Yeah, you
I
say
don't
both
think it'll
sides are
happen.
trying to avoid it, but the U.S. is doing a pretty shitty job of avoiding it. They constantly
Yeah, well,
moving closer and closer and closer,
yeah,
and they let
yeah,
Israel do
yeah.
whatever it wants.
Right.
They can
I know.
bomb who
I
they
know.
want, do whatever
Right.
will protect them. So it's just the
Yeah.
way it's going. Israel wants World War III. Netanyahu, I
Right.
mean, and Zelensky's also
Yeah.
panicking on
Well.
the end. He
Yeah.
needs World War III too. These are both
Yeah.
of our guys, and they're the ones that are pulling the U.S. chariot. I mean,
Yeah.
are
Okay.
these
Well.
these
Well, I would say no. Zelensky really isn't. He doesn't have the kind of power that Netanyahu does. Netanyahu really can call the shots. Zelensky he's not without power. He has his own agency, but he can't call the shots the way that Netanyahu can. He wouldn't get the 58 standing ovations. He
I
might
guess
just
the
get half
problem
that,
is,
right?
yeah, okay, I
But
stand corrected. But the
yeah,
problem
yeah,
is that NATO
yeah,
is determined
yeah.
to do this. The
Uh-huh.
U.S. establishment
Yeah.
wants this war to continue in Ukraine.
Well,
You know,
okay. Okay, in Ukraine, yeah, definitely. But
but they
not
don't
in the
want the
Middle
war to
East.
right. So
Yeah,
they're
they
we're
don't,
pushing
but
this.
right. But the
We can
problem
end.
is they
Yeah,
can't say no to Netanyahu.
right,
So
right.
there is part of them. So they're just incoherent. I think they really don't want a war with Iran. They've shown that in the past again and again. They've tried to avoid it. They come close to it, and I think again they do want to avoid it. But they've got this man in Israel. Netanyahu is telling him to do things which clearly could very well draw them into a war with Iran. That's where
Mm.
we are. Well, I think actually I probably should go. I
Yeah.
think
Okay. Me too.
almost midnight about now.
Right. Okay. Okay. Then let's call it. We'll stop it here. All right. Have a good weekend, Dad.
Okay,
Okay. Bye bye.
bye.